Hello, 8Push students. Welcome to topic 3.2, movement in the early republic. Our learning objective here is to explain how and why migration and immigration to and within North America caused competition and conflict over time. Our first learning objective looks at various American Indian groups who have repeatedly evaluated and adjusted their alliances with Europeans, other tribes in the United States, seeking to limit migration of white settlers and maintain control of tribal lands and natural resources. British alliances with American Indians contributed to tensions between the United States and Great Britain. The map here looks at America, the American frontier between 1793 and 1812. Now, 1812 gets a little bit ahead of ourselves as far as what this unit looks at, but many of the places here are relevant for our purposes. As you can see, these small black X's, this shape here, represent posts in U.S. territory held by the British. Right? So note that these are posts in U.S. territory. The U.S. owns these regions. But they're held by the British still until 1796, 10 years plus past the end of the American Revolution. We looked at previously in topic 3.10, Jay's Treaty, which works to get rid of these British posts, and we're going to explore that a little bit again. The red X's here, the crossed swords, these are engagements with Indians. These are U.S. military engagements with native tribes here in the Northwest region, right? So when we did our work with the Articles of Confederation, we looked at one of the few positives to come out of the Articles of Confederation was this idea of the Northwest Ordinance of taking empty land, new territory, and turning them into states. So this is the Northwest, right? If you think of the original 13 states. And as you can see, we have British forts, British installments on U.S. territory, and they are aiding these native tribes in combat and skirmishes and conflict against American settlers on the frontier. Obviously, this was originally native land that white settlers are moving into, and setting up camp. So naturally, there's going to be conflict with the native tribes there. But the British are working to make these conflicts worse and occur more often. And this is going to be a major issue for the young United States, the young republic, to not let that occur on their territory. Of these battles, the most important one and the one that we're going to have noted a little bit and you'll hear kind of the most about is this Battle of Fallen Timbers. This is one of the last large conflicts in this area between the white settlers and the native tribes of the region. Treaties are put in place to try to quell this violence between the American settlers and the native tribes in the region. One such treaty is the Treaty of Canandaigua, signed in 1794 by President George Washington and leaders of the Haudenosaunee. Your goal here on this page is to listen to a selection of this podcast called Ben Franklin's World. And you're going to find and summarize the goals of the United States at this treaty. And what are the goals of the natives at this treaty? What do they hope to get out of it? Shameless local history plug. On Wednesday, November 11th, is always the commemoration to celebrate the anniversary of the Canandaigua Treaty. The large rock that you see on the grounds of the Ontario County Courthouse on Main Street there commemorates the Canandaigua Treaty. And every year, members of the Haudenosaunee leadership meet at the primary school at Sucker Brook, down there by the primary school, and make the walk up to the Ontario County Courthouse, where they are met by federal representatives to continue to celebrate the ongoing treaty that was signed back in 1794 and is still in place today. This represents one of the more successful native treaties between native tribes and the United States government. Now, as increasing numbers of migrants from North America and other parts of the world continue to move westward, frontier cultures that had emerged in the colonial period continue to grow, fueling social, political, and ethnic tensions. So some of those treaties that we had mentioned in our previous work, 3.10, are outlined here. We're going to dive a little bit more deeply into those. On the left-hand side, we have the cause. What was going on? What was the issue? What was the problem that led this treaty to be formed, that caused the need for this treaty? And then finally, on the right-hand side, we're going to see what's the effect, what came out of it. So the first one to take a look at, as previously mentioned, is Jay's Treaty. The issue, the problem, British occupied those forts in America's West. The British practiced the policy of impressment of sailors. Impressment is the term for taking over a ship and forcing the crew of that ship to basically join your navy. So the British would capture and kidnap American ships on the seas and force the sailors and crew to work for the British Navy. And the British continued to interfere with our shipping on the Atlantic and along the coast. To solve this problem, John Jay was sent to meet with the British to work out some solutions to these issues. The result was Jay's Treaty in 1794. The effect of this is to keep the United States out of European war, right? So we're able to avoid conflict with them. And it makes more land available in the West by getting the British forts off of the frontier. So in that respect, that one aspect of the treaty, it's seen as relatively successful. Less successful with stopping the impressment and interfering with our shipping. But it does make more land available in the West. The next treaty that we took a look at back in 3.10 was the Pinckney Treaty in 1795 down in the southern United States. This was a disputed boundary of North Florida. We can take a look at the map of it here. So here we are here. It creates this Pinckney Treaty line with the land south of it belongs to the Spanish. And the United States, what the United States benefits from this treaty is the full use of the Mississippi River for trade and commerce, and the full free use of the port of New Orleans, which is where ships would get on and off the river. What is the effect of this? The effect of this is economic opportunities in the West. Farmers and planters that set up land and farms and plantations in the region can now use the Mississippi River to ship their goods out to market. And the final one is the Treaty of Grenville. The issue here was the Western Confederacy Wars out in the Northwest. Here we can see that illustrated here. So there's that conflict of fallen timbers that we had mentioned previously. The result of this treaty ends some of the fighting here in our Northwest. This is the southern border of modern-day Ohio. The Ohio River, you can see the eastern side here, butts up with the state of Pennsylvania. So just for some context of where we are. The result of this is increased safety for settlers in the West. They don't need to worry so much about being attacked, being taken over by native tribes there. So if we look down the right-hand side of this chart, this helps to answer that question of why. Why are more people headed out west? There's a land available now. There's economic opportunity on that land, and there's safety in getting there and once you're there, right? So it gives these pull reasons to settle and move to the western frontier for these white settlers. And these conditions, again, were established by these diplomatic treaties and negotiations. Now, the changing map of the United States. On the left-hand side, you can see the United States in 1790, and then fast forward just 10 years later to 1800. You can note some similarities and differences, some things that show up. We have, for instance, some new states added: Kentucky, Tennessee, Vermont. We see the Indian Territory split a little bit. There's some disputed land down here between the United States and Georgia, and some other differences as you look around. The Seri Triangle is an important part. This is something that the Treaty of Canandaigua specifically references and gives the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois, free passage through. So they can go from New York into lands in the Ohio Territory. So that might be mentioned in the podcast, and that's what they're talking about there. So using the maps from the previous slide, I want you to predict 2 positives and 2 negatives of the United States expanding westward in 1800. So use your best inferencing skills. What are some positives and negatives of that expansion west? Now, our next learning objective is to explain the continuities and changes in regional attitudes about slavery as it expanded from 1754 to 1800. So it's not just white settlers moving west for new land. Those coming from southern states, slave states, are bringing their slaves with them. And what is the impact of that? For that, you'll check out this video from Khan Academy to get some more interpretation and some statistics. The expansion of slavery in the Deep South and adjacent Western lands and rising anti-slavery sentiment began to create distinctive regional attitudes towards slavery. Now, you guys have some historical context you can add to this from the time of after the Revolution, the Constitutional Convention, when different states start to set themselves up as slave states and free states, and what some of those arguments were about and what they're going to continue to be about. The expansion of slavery westward is only going to add to that animus amongst the 2 different groups. Here we can see that spelled out. This is the census of 1810, so it's a little bit past our time period for this topic, but you can see the purple dots there. There's the concentration of enslaved Africans and how it expands into those new western states of Kentucky and Tennessee. You can see it coalescing here around the southern Mississippi and the Port of New Orleans as well. So in looking at the census data from this map, what are the social, political, and economic implications of the expansion of slavery into the West? So social is people, society, how folks get along with one another. Political is laws and politics and government. And economic, we know the definition of that. So that is topic 3.12. Thank you for watching and listening, and we look forward to chatting with you later. Goodbye.